Welcome back to Politicking, and now joining me, a return visit with former U.S. Senator Lincoln Chafee, a Republican-turned-independent Democrat. He's been a United States Senator and Governor of Rhode Island. He's now running for a chance to be the Democratic nominee in the 2016 election. Lincoln, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Be back, Larry. Thank you for inviting me. No, thank you.
All right, with Mr. Sanders causing a ripple and with Mr. Trump causing a storm, are you getting kind of lost in the undertow?
Well, it's early. It's still July, and the first votes won't be cast until early February in Iowa, so it's a long way to go. It's just the dog days of summer right now.
What do you make of this Trump thing?
Well, it kind of reminds me of Ross Perot back in 1992, someone with a lot of money that's never even run for any kind of office, state senator, dog catcher, school committee, that wants to be president of the United States. So we'll see how it sorts out. So far, it's not reflecting well on the Republican Party.
What got you into this? Why are you running, Lincoln? You've had a long and very successful career, governor, senator. Why this?
Well, back when I first contemplated it, there was only one candidate, really, the front runner, Secretary Clinton. And I thought the voters should have choices. And I thought I differed with Secretary Clinton on our approach to the world. And since then, 4 others have gotten in, so there's 5 of us. Still not a lot compared to the Republican side, especially. So the main thing is about choices, giving the voters choices. And as you said, I have a good resume, also mayor of my city. So I'm the only candidate, Republican or Democrat, that's been a mayor, a senator, and a governor. And plus I have the vision of where we fit in the world, the vision of the future for our children and grandchildren.
Have they scheduled Democratic debates?
No, they have not yet.
Will there be Democratic debates?
Yes, there will. I think they're talking about 6 or 7 before the Iowa caucuses.
With all 5?
I hope so.
What's the most important issue to you?
Well, I do think any community, anywhere, depends on a strong middle class. So that's what's happened over the last 10, 12, 15 years. So the middle class is a huge issue, and Senator Sanders certainly is tapping into that. And also where we fit in the world. As we look at the unrest in the Middle East and spreading through North Africa and into Nigeria, that we just have to deal with some of these conflicts so they don't continue to escalate. So those 2 issues, building the middle class and the socially beneficial programs that have proven to work, Pell Grants, Head Start, invest in those programs, and then looking about what's happening overseas. Those are the 2 big issues, Larry.
What brought you to the Democratic Party?
Well, the big one was the Bush tax cuts, the Bush-Cheney tax cuts. The Republican Party, even the Rockefeller Republicans, which I was, liberal Republicans, they always took care of the books. And when finally we took a surplus, the Republican Party took a surplus and turned it into deficits, that was the final straw. We might disagree on a lot of social issues, but we always tried to take care of the books, put on the green eye shade, and take care of the surpluses. When they came in and they gave the big tax cuts to the wealthy, got us into a war they didn't pay for, did the prescription drug benefit without paying for it, those were the final straws.
As you see it, what happened to your party, your old party?
It moved south. Back in the 60s, President Nixon had what they called the Southern Strategy. He saw where Barry Goldwater won 6 states in his presidential campaign of 1964, and his home state of Arizona, and then the Deep South. And just because he voted against the Civil Rights Act, that was enough for the Southerners to vote for a Republican, which used to be the party of Abraham Lincoln. There was no Republicans in the South. And then gradually from there, the party turned to the South, and now it's now the old solid South used to be for the Democrats, and now it's Republican. And that changed the issues. And you can see that now in the presidential campaign, beating up on the immigration and all the social issues such as abortion and gay marriage. That's not the old Republican Party.
In fact, that party now might even reject Nixon and Reagan.
That's right. That's right. It's gone so far into the social issues. It's so difficult. John McCain and Mitt Romney found it so difficult to then come back to the middle after going through those Republican primaries.
During your campaign launch and on this...
I have no...
Go ahead.
So I have no regrets about becoming a Democrat. That's one of my best decisions.
During your campaign launch on this program and in others, you called to allow Edward Snowden to come home. Do you think the public agrees with you on that?
Well, leadership is about shaping public opinion, and the courts have ruled that what we as a government were doing was illegal and violated the Fourth Amendment, which requires a warrant if you're going to tap our phones. And the courts have ruled that what Snowden did was appropriate. Our government, U.S. government, was violating the Fourth Amendment. And so he didn't go to a foreign government and release these secrets. He went to the New York Times. And I think that he should, he served his 2 years in exile. He should come home. And we should really be careful about jeopardizing our civil liberties in pursuit of security. Benjamin Franklin was right. Before you know it, you won't have either. And Snowden, I think, did the right thing. He went to the New York Times and said, what I'm seeing here violates the Fourth Amendment.
Lincoln, I think you've raised $30,000. Is that going to be a problem?
Yes, it is, certainly. I've been in 12 different campaigns, locally, federally, statewide. All of them have been competitive, and you need the resources. So I've got to ramp that up.
So how are you going to make it happen? Let's be practical, Lincoln. You're a veteran politician. You seem up against it.
Oh, yes. I think the unexpected phenomenon was Senator Sanders taking off. First to him getting in the race, and then him taking off. I mean, God bless him, he's on to a good issue, and I think that's great, and it's good for the Democratic Party to be having these debates. So just looking ahead, see what happens with Secretary Clinton, see what happens with Senator Sanders, and then you have Jim Webb, Martin O'Malley, and Link Chafee in talking about the issues, and it's a long way to go, as we know. The Ed Muskies of the world, and the Gary Harts and different things do happen to the front runners. So we'll just wait and see.
All right, let's assess your Democratic opponents. What do you think of Bernie Sanders?
I like them all. I honestly do, Larry. It's so brave to get into this meat grinder of a presidential campaign and get in and talk about the issues. I do believe, and I'm hearing it from people in New Hampshire and Iowa, we want choices. They say thank you for running over and over again. They haven't made up their minds, and they want to listen, but the number one thing they say is thank you for running. So I applaud them all.
Why has Sanders touched a nerve?
I think because he's authentic. He has lived it his whole career. And he became mayor of Burlington. He did a good job as mayor, and then into Congress, and then United States Senate. And he's just always stood up for what he's talking about now. And it's in every fiber of his being. I think the public relates with that. This isn't something that he's just polled and is running on because it happens to do well in the polls. It's everything he stood for, and I applaud that.
What about Martin O'Malley?
He has the executive experience. That's what he continually says. I have been mayor of Baltimore, and I've been governor of Maryland. I have that chief executive experience. On the other hand, he doesn't have the national and international experience, but he's very energetic and very personable.
Jim Webb.
I just met Jim Webb last week in Iowa, and I was very impressed. Chatted for a while, served his country in Vietnam, and some of the just searing times in Vietnam as a Marine, and that certainly has shaped his life. In his speech, he alluded to where the United States fits militarily and the job of president as commander-in-chief.
Very much his own man.
Yes, yes, and I think shaped a lot by the South, and wants to make sure the Democratic Party retains some empathy for Southern issues.
And finally, Hillary Clinton, what's your assessment of the former Secretary of State?
She's got all the money, she has all the endorsements, and certainly has a record as the First Lady in Arkansas to Governor Bill Clinton, and then First Lady to President Bill Clinton, Secretary of State, Senator from New York. Her issue, of course, is voting for the war, and then that tenure during Secretary of State of being hawkish, and that's an issue that I think we should be debating as we go forward. That muscular unilateral approach to the world, that's a good thing we should be debating. Let her defend her positions on Libya and Iraq and Egypt and some of these very, very important issues we should be talking about.
She's dropped in the polls in Iowa and Colorado and Virginia. What do you make of that?
These are all what they call the purple states, the swing states. So every Democrat wants to win in 2016. I mean, that's number one for all of us. So I think everybody's just watching that, how we stack up against the potential Republican candidates. That's number one, Supreme Court and all the ramifications of winning in 2016. That's number one.
Is there any Democrat among the four we've mentioned that you would not support?
No, of course not. No, the main thing is winning in 2016. And the Supreme Court, we just saw with standing up for the Affordable Care Act and gay marriage, so important. There's so many issues that the Democratic Party is better on.
Now, how do you assess the Republican? Which Republican poses the most problem for the Democrats as you see it?
I really haven't focused. There's 16 of them now, Larry, and there's just, I've got to focus on my race here on the Democratic side and see what happens. I just have watched what John McCain and Mitt Romney went through, and it's just so hard to come out of those primaries back into a general. So I wish them well as they go through that bitter primary meat grinder.
Do they all have to run to the right to win the primary?
Yes. Yes, that's what we've seen in the past. John McCain in particular, he became a completely different candidate than the Senator John McCain I served with in the Senate. Senator McCain was good on the environment, good on climate change, good on immigration, so many good stands he took. He was one of the Gang of 14 that I served with him on. He and I were the only two Republicans to vote against the Bush-Cheney tax cuts in the end. But then he had to become a different candidate. He learned that in his loss in 2000. So when he came back in 2008, he had to run to the right. It was a shame.
Do you buy anything to the possibility that Joe Biden might get in?
Well, you're a racetrack guy. I'd put $2 on that.
You think he might?
I think he's going to get in.
Really?
I do. I'd put $2. Oh, yes, I do.
Is that a gut or you more than a gut?
Well, I see him standing with President Obama in every photo. And especially the big main profile when the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Affordable Care Act, the deal with Iran, the opening of Cuba. It always seems the vice president standing right there. That seems to signal something to me. And you know, he's run before. He's run in 1988, and of course in 2008. And I served with him on the Foreign Relations Committee. We've traveled together to Iraq and done some trips together to Mexico. I'll put my $2 that he gets in.
You supported Obama in 2008. How do you think he's done?
He's done well with reviving the economy, especially. He inherited just a meltdown. And then, of course, the Affordable Care Act is something that generations of Americans are going to benefit from. And now just the great news in Iran, huge news, as big as opening China, I think, because that country is so important, all the Shia issues that we deal with in the Middle East, and Cuba after all these years. On the other side, I think everyone was hoping for kind of a post-partisan, remember those words, with President Obama. We're going to try and get away from all this partisanship. I don't blame him for that, but that's an area that we still have to deal with, all this partisanship.
Lincoln, always good talking with you. We'll be seeing lots of you down the trail.
I look forward to it, Larry. Thank you.
As always, my thanks to Lincoln Chafee, and thanks to you for joining me on this edition of Politicking.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.